Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description.
Ah, it was especially noisy today. You're right. Marin, can I ask you something? Depends on what? I'll be late tomorrow, about 10 minutes. I want to buy flowers for Natalia Stanislavovna. She really helped me with my diploma. Remember I told you about her? Ah, is this the one who helped you get a job with us? I remember. So, it's her birthday tomorrow. And now is just the time for inspections, in general. Will you cover for her? What are you talking about? Easy. Two girls walked out of the kindergarten building and headed toward the bus stop. Marina and Anya had met during their college internships, a year apart. Marina had graduated earlier and was eagerly awaiting her friend's arrival. Anya was a kind of island of calm. She was not forgiving and did not strive to help everyone. Quite the opposite. In fact, she was rather aloof and did not strive to make new acquaintances. Nevertheless, she was an interesting and pleasant conversationalist. Marina recalled their first meeting and couldn't help but smile. They bumped into each other on the stairs, and both were wearing casts afterward. Lost in her thoughts, she missed the moment she stepped out onto the street. Carefully, there was a screech of brakes and a dull thud. The girl miraculously remained standing on her feet from the sharp push. She looked back. Anya! An ambulance! Please! Marina screamed, rushing to her friend. The last thing Anna saw was her friend's frightened and tear-stained face. Darkness, viscous and thick, filling all space. It enveloped, permeated my consciousness. Time and space existed within it. The darkness, as strange as it may sound, simply was. Gradually my thoughts slowed, and recent events faded. After some time, the darkness began to shift. A little later, I felt an incomprehensible force and a presence. An unusually hazy image appeared before my eyes, and echoes of sounds reached me. As time passed, the image became clearer, the sounds more distinct, and soon I was overcome. I screamed, writhed, sobbed, begged for it to stop, but nothing helped. I couldn't move, I couldn't stop it. Foreign memories rushed into my consciousness in one continuous stream, causing excruciating pain incomparable to anything else. This torture seemed never ending. It was someone else's memory, someone else's emotions. I didn't want to accept them, and that only made the pain worse, though it seemed like there was nowhere else to go. Please, came a pleading voice. Please take them. Look after my little ones, the woman's voice said, sobbing. A child. Her last memory. I always knew that my love for children would play a cruel joke on me. And fortunately or unfortunately, that was my last thought before I lost consciousness again. I woke up to a baby's crying right next to me. I didn't hear it right away. It felt like I was being covered with a glass lid, and trying to sit up quickly made me nauseous and had a headache. My muscles felt uneasy and ached terribly. My eyes searched for the source of the noise, and with trembling hands, I picked up the bundle. So that's what you're like, baby, I whispered, rocking the girl. Hanabi. The name popped into my head against my will. Carefully placing the quickly calming baby down, I leaned back on the futon and, curled into a ball, began to cry. Everything had been taken from me. I'd just graduated from college, a young woman ready for adventure and a promising educator. I turned 20 this fall. And now I'm a damn time traveler, trapped in the body of some unknown Hade Hyuga. I bit my knuckles to keep from whining. By shoving me into an unreal anime world, they'd simply ripped 10 years out of me. This body is 10 years older than me. 10, for fuck's sake. Oh, my little one, if you knew everything, would you sleep so soundly? I whispered to the child. No, probably not. I closed my eyes tiredly and immediately fell asleep. I stood, staring blankly into the mirror. Reflected in its surface was a beautiful woman with long, dark blue hair, fair skin, and beautiful lavender eyes, veiled by fluffy eyelashes. Petite in stature and clad in a delicate lilac kimono, she looked like a delicate and expensive porcelain doll. "Hi, Sama. How are you feeling?" The pretty brown-haired girl assigned to me asks me for the umpteenth time. "It's all good, Tamao. And please, let's not use the Sama, or I'll feel like an old woman." "What are you saying, Sama?" the girl whispered. "How can I?" I just sighed heavily at this. Huey. One word, but so much meaning. The authoritarianism that reigns here is taken almost to the point of absurdity, and it's terribly stressing me out. The clan is divided into two parts, the main house and the branch house, a system that protects the secrets of the Bikugan from outsiders. The main house rules the family, while the branch house protects it. Members of the branch house are branded with a cursed seal when the heir of the main house turns 3 years old. This seal grants members of the main house absolute control over members of the branch house, as they can destroy the brain cells of branch house members with a simple hand seal or inflict intense pain on them to punish them. This seal also guarantees the safety of the Hyuga Bikugan, as it seals the Bikugan after the bearer of the seal dies. Being essentially slaves simply by birth order or inheritance, some members of the branch house are hostile to members of the main house. At their core, the Hyuga are two clans, each with its own leader, traditions, and way of life. The differences between them are too obvious to simply ignore, hence the infighting. Such policies are deadly, corroding the clan from within. A little over a week has passed since I arrived. I've more or less gotten used to my new self, although sometimes I just feel like crying. And some of the realities of this world seem outlandish to me. The medical officer examining me said it was stress from childbirth, during which I felt like I'd died. Yep, clinical death. So, constant supervision was a must. Luckily, they let me choose my own. Nani. I was given boys of various ages, and I chose Tomo. The 13-year-old belonged to a collateral branch. So, at first, she turned pale whenever she saw me, hunched her shoulders, and didn't know where to look. It took me a great deal of effort to make this bright child more confident and calm around me, and all my efforts paid off. Tomo proved to be a wonderful conversationalist and assistant, as well as a source of information. She was a genin, which was only to my advantage. The girl happily shared everything that happened during her training. And while no one is watching, mostly at night, I try to replicate what Tomo showed me. It's going very badly, but I'm already more stable on my feet and can even sense chakra, which means I've at least made progress. Tomo also talks about everything that happens in the clan. After all, I am the wife of the head. There is no point in hiding anything from me, and about what is happening outside the quarter. Speaking of my husband, I still haven't seen Hayashi. They told me he was too busy. Personally, that kind of attitude irritates me. The most enjoyable part of this mess was spending time with the little ones. I happily cuddled the baby, so full of life, and warmed to the thought of getting to Niji, whom I also hadn't met yet. Little Hinata is 2 years old and never leaves my side, even sleeping in my room. It's just a shame Hanabi was still too young, and we're not allowed to leave the clan quarters. But that's fixable. I've already managed to surprise a couple of clan members with my bloodlust, and I'm excellent at releasing ki, not like Kushina, of course, but still. That's what it means to be Russian. So, for now, no one has been particularly bold enough to forbid me anything. I was also thinking about finding out if I had an element. Hyuga usually doesn't, but my intuition has never let me down. Hi, Sama. Tomo's clear voice pulled me out of my thoughts. Forgive me, hi, Sama. I won't be able to join you tomorrow. Nonsense, Tama-chan, don't apologize. Training? Mission. The little brown-haired girl hesitated and clutched the fabric of her sweater. Ask away. I smiled. Aw, hi, Sama. Could you, well... The girl blushed, clenched her fingers tighter, and said in a low voice, Sing! I looked closely at the girl. I sang only for Hinata and Hanabi, having checked first to see if anyone was nearby. I sang only for my family. That's a holdover from my previous life. Where from? It was an accident. Honestly, I'm sorry. The girl was ready to bang her forehead on the floor, but I managed to intercept her. Tamao, look at me. Forget for now that I'm the clan chief's wife. Who do you see? This. Well, you are very beautiful, Hyade-sama. Like all Hyuga. No, you're very kind, and you're not part of the side branch like the others. I saw you save 3 kids from punishment several times, and you love Hinataheim and Hanabi-chan very much. You're strange, different, and that's why She babbled, her voice fading from a whisper to a near shout. Okay. I let go of the girl I liked and took the toothless smiling baby in my arms, closing my eyes. Oka-san. A dark-haired head appeared from the doorway. Did something happen, Hina-chan? I gestured, beckoning the embarrassed little girl over to me. Ano, I want to listen too, she said, pressing herself against my side. Hanabi squealed and waved her arms in my arms. Well, since that's what everyone wants. When we are well into our 20s, perhaps we will laugh more quietly. Oh, with a smile, leafing through childhood albums. What they were and what they became. Oh, it was coming faster and faster. Our tomorrow will begin in the morning. And today it seems to us that it is not enough. What we only dreamed of yesterday. And life won't end tomorrow. It will be long for us. But you have time to tell me everything. While we are young. While we are loved. And don't be afraid to be weak. And I will be strong with you. After all, life doesn't end tomorrow. While we are young. While we are loved. When we are seriously over 30, we will be afraid to fall in love with someone. Oh, the measured pace of adult life. The goals have been achieved in order of thought. Oh, and let them all roll along. Summer gives way to winter. And let Fridays flash by. While we are young. While we are loved. It was so beautiful. Thank you, Tamao. Quite unexpectedly, the twins Hayashi and Hizashi entered the room without knocking. The former had a somber expression, the latter a rather friendly smile. Hizashi was dressed in a green and white clan robe, and Hayashi in a white kimono with a black cloak over it. The twins had pleasant, aristocratic features, long black hair, and, like all members of the clan, unusual lavender-colored eyes. The girl sitting next to me turned pale, and, bowing deeply, hurried away. Good morning. Hizashi began the conversation. We're glad you're feeling better. His gaze slid over the little girls, and his smile grew full-fledged. Mornings are never good. I smiled broadly, looking at the twins' surprised faces. It was a pity that they came to their senses too quickly. Still, Hade was strange, kind by nature. She was too reserved, secretive, and, in my opinion, her condition resembled a vegetable. Hayashi said, looking me over appraisingly. Judging by the photo, I really did change Hayate's appearance. Her skin tone went from sickly white to marbled. Her cheeks took on a healthy flush. In fact, before my intervention, Hayate looked like a living corpse. But now I can boast of a pretty face. Once I get to the training ground, I'll tone up my figure, and I'll be a real cutie. My attention was drawn to the chestnut-colored crown of his head, and a pair of lavender eyes that appeared from behind Hizashi's legs. The younger twin, following my interested gaze, nudged his son slightly. Hello, the boy said shyly. It's good to see you, Niji. I smiled encouragingly. We need to talk. Hayashi, who had been silent until then, said, Okay. I hope no one will mind if Hinata-chan and Niji-kun look after the baby. And handing the younger one to Hinata, I stand up and head for the exit, letting the men know it wasn't a question. The younger twin looked at me with surprise, the older one with irritation. Well, let them get used to it. I won't let them walk all over me, and if they get angry, I'll establish a matriarchy. If you want to live, you'll have to learn to spin. And as far as I understand, I still have a long way to go here, and I definitely don't like the lifestyle of the previous owner of this body. We reached the head's office in stony silence. That suited me just fine. Contact needs to be established, no matter what. Especially with my husband. No, I could snatch the kids and run for it. I don't think any village would refuse a gift in the form of 4 promising shinobi with the Byakugan. But I doubt I'm ready for such a feat, so, for now, it's best to keep a low profile. There are some advantages, after all. I'm out of Danzo's reach. Well, at least for now. He's the man I fear most. As far as I remember the plot, no one's particularly interested in the Hyuga, but Shimura might be. And since I'm here, it's a good thing to make trouble for this old man. To pull this off, I need to be sure I won't be killed prematurely, and what could be better than a clan like the Hyuga? Now I need to collect my thoughts and stay safe. She glanced furtively at Hizashi. How ironic, the previous owner of this body had been in love with him. But a marriage of convenience had settled everything. I recall that several years before the series began, Konoha held a grand celebration to mark the end of the war between it and Kumogakure. They wanted to sign a peace treaty, and even planned to join the alliance. Only the Hyuga clan did not participate in this celebration, as Hinata turned 3 that day. It was also the day that Niji became Hinata's bodyguard. That same night, a man infiltrated the Hyuga clan's estate and kidnapped Hinata. Hayashi killed the intruder. However, the kidnapper turned out to be the leader of the Kumogakure ninja who had come to Konoha to sign a peace treaty with them. He wanted to steal the secret of the Byakugan. Konoha told Kumogakure that Hayashi had killed their shinobi to prevent Hinata's kidnapping, but Kumogakure denied this, demanding the body of their shinobi's killer, Hayashi. Not wanting to worsen the budding relationship, Konoha agreed, but instead of Hayashi's body, they gave him the body of his twin brother, Hizashi. Hizashi sacrificed his life, not to save his clan, but to protect his brother. Quite noble of him, I must say, considering his brother used a Juin on him. Perhaps I'll start with that. I like the younger one more than the older one. And it's not even about the former Hyuga's feelings. He's more alive, I guess. Some of the Hyugas I've met were like dolls, with completely empty eyes. Hayashi has the same look. It's scary. The office was quite bright, though not much different from any other room. This over-the-top adherence to tradition is starting to annoy me. My eye is already twitching, and I haven't even seen half of it yet. The Hyuga possess the most despotic customs, influenced by constant power struggles within the clan and past coup attempts. Of no small importance is the fact that the Hyuga, as powerful shinobi, are quite impulsive but lack sufficient experience in working with their minds, so they strictly regulate their lives and try to restrain strong emotional outbursts. This, coupled with their thirst for power, has had a negative effect. And the emergence of hidden villages is to blame for everything. Because of them, the permanent external threat has weakened, internal problems and tensions have taken on new dimensions, and members of the main branch have become more presumptuous towards their clanmates, although in reality, it doesn't reach the point of actual bullying. Living in hidden villages has had a detrimental effect on the morale of many clans and hereditary shinobi, due to a shift in focus from constant survival and combat readiness to other interests. This doesn't mean everything has suddenly gotten worse, but those in the know will immediately feel the difference. We sat down in Hayashi's office at the table, me opposite, and Hizashi a little further to the left. "What happened?" the elder asked coldly. And I bet my head that the younger one barely managed to restrain himself from the world-famous hand to face gesture. His hand even twitched. Childbirth. Hayashi glared at these words. "If he keeps this up, I'll gouge out his blinkers. I died. Massive blood loss, my body couldn't cope. Clinical death. My heart didn't beat for exactly a minute. Then a coma. According to the medical officer who treated me, it lasted 98 days. You have changed." Death is an unpleasant thing in general. After it, life becomes impossible to live as before. Did you see anything? Asked a quiet Hayashi, ignoring his brother's latest angry glare. There's nothing there. I shook my head. At least, I didn't see anything. Just darkness. Thick and cold. There was silence for a while. Oka-san? Yes, Hina-chan. You won't leave again? He said, grabbing me tightly by the hem of my robe. No, little one. I'm not going anywhere anymore. I answer a little hesitantly, her question leaving me stunned. Do you love Hanabi-chan more? It's just... The girl lowered her head, but I managed to see tears welling up in her eyes. I knelt down and hugged the girl tightly. Don't cry, my dear. I love you and Hanabi equally. It's just that your Ka-san was sick for a long time. But now I'm feeling better. And I promise you that everything will be fine between us. When our Hanabi grows up a bit, we'll all train together. And you? The girl looked up at me in surprise. Me too. I kiss her forehead and tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. Do you believe me? I believe you. Hinata smiled. Do you love Inai-san too? Niji? The girl nodded. And I love Niji. We're family after all. Besides, I winked slyly at Hinata. Just remember how he made eyes at me for cookies. How can you not love him? Hinata laughed and hugged me tightly around the neck. The days dragged on. Hayashi refused to let me leave the house. I didn't like that at all. No, I didn't start a scene. That's not my style. I methodically harassed him, slowly and tastefully, which is why the older twin prefers to minimize his time in my company. Over time, it became more difficult to hide my clandestine training as Hinata and Niji joined in, but the solution to this problem was quickly approaching. Soon my rehabilitation period would be over, and I would be able to use my chakra to its full potential. Today, I felt a bit blue, and following an inner impulse, I went for a walk outside the clan quarter, leaving Hanabi in Tamao's care. As I walked through the bustling streets of Konoha, I kept glancing around. The streets were bustling with life, and it seemed like nothing stood still. Mischievous children, trying to squeeze right under your feet, either for fun or just playing with their friends, kicking up all the dust in the process. Stallholders trying to sell you their wares. And all this surrounded by colorful rooftops and bright signs. I turned the corner and stopped, completely surprised. For boys, Jinin, by the look of them, had cornered a child. No older than my Hinata. Upon closer inspection, I recognized a young peacock from the main branch, too clanless, but not the last one, also a Hyuga, standing frowning a little further away. The child, however, had been identified as an Uchiha, and none other than Sasuke. Without further hesitation, I headed in their direction. And now the little one. And now you boys quickly disappear from here. I released Ki and stopped my gaze on the unfamiliar Hyuga. Except you. The boy turned green, revealing his sect. So, all is not lost for him yet. We'll train him. The offenders fled, and I crouched down next to the cowering Yukishinok, ceasing to release my chi. How are you, kid? They didn't manage to do anything to you? I'm not a baby, the still shaking boy replied briskly, and a pair of stunning onyx eyes looked at me. I'm hate. I feel an astonished look on the back of my head. Are you sure you're not hurt? The boy shook his head. Look how brave you are. And who will you be, a hero? Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke. The boy turned up his nose. And may I ask, Sasuke-san, what are you doing so far from the Uchiha quarter all alone? The boy hesitated and became embarrassed. His stomach began to rumble. Come on, hero, I chuckled, standing up. First we'll feed you, and on the way you can tell us what's going on. You're coming with us. I turned to Hyuga. Who? Erasure Hyde-sama. I took Sasuke's hand and headed toward the tea house I'd chosen. I figured no one would kill me if I treated the little Uchiha to some tea and a couple of mochi. I'm very surprised he's here alone, But I'm not going to hunt down every Uchiha I come across, much less go to their neighborhood. They don't really like Hyugas. And I'm not mentally prepared for such heroic deeds yet. I went after an Isan. Sasuke began his story. But he walked too fast, and I lost him. I smile understandingly, lightly patting him on the top of his head, and look away. Well, Erasure, tell me what prompted you to do this. The boy clenched his fists and pursed his lips. It's all clear with him. They assigned him to that peacock and threatened him with a Juin. He probably thinks he's in for a punishment. What kind of a mess have they made of children? I won't use it. I look into his eyes, widening in surprise. And you don't have to give me the details. Arashi-kun, I trust in your discretion. Thank you, Hyde-sama. Hyuga bowed, completely shocked. The three of us were sitting in a tea shop with delicious sweets. Sasuke, taking advantage of the fact that everyone was listening to him, chattered about becoming a shinobi and surpassing his brother. He asked Erasure and me about the academy and the shinobi life. And this miracle would become an avenger. Yes, killing Kishimoto as punishment would be too humane. Good afternoon. Inai-san! Sasuke jumped up. Two Uchiha approached our table, their expressions less than friendly. Thanks to my experience interacting with my clanmates, I've become adept at discerning emotions even in those who at first glance seem completely devoid of them. These two were wary and tense. Erasure also tensed up, but after looking at me calmly sipping my tea, he relaxed, which didn't go unnoticed by the dark-eyed ones. Good morning. I nod, looking at the people who approached. Itachi and Shursui, right? I waited for nods before continuing. If you're not in a hurry, I suggest we join you. Three pairs of eyes looked at me in surprise. And if you're only for Sasuke, at least let the kid finish his tea. I add, smiling playfully. We promise not to bite, right, Arashi-kun? The brown-haired man nodded slowly, and the Uchiha stood for a minute, and then landed at our table. Hugo Hate, I introduced myself. Hi, Sen. May I ask how you met Sasuke? I think the adventure should be told directly by the participant. Right, hero? That's... Sasuke glanced at his brother, embarrassed. I wanted to follow you, Inai-san. So, while no one was looking, I ran out of the neighborhood. But then, for some reason, a few boys jumped me. Sasuke pouted, offended. Hyde-san chased them away and offered them some tea. Thank you. Itachi bowed his head gratefully. Nonsense, Itachi-kun. Arashi-kun and I just happened to be nearby and got involved in that mess. Arashi-kun recognized the guys from his class, so they won't go unpunished. I had no doubt about it from the older man's promising look. Hyde-san, if it's not a secret, what were you doing here? Shursui narrowed his eyes. Erasure flinched, but I covered his hand with mine in a conciliatory manner and smiled. They're within their rights. We'd have behaved exactly the same way if it had been one of our kids in Sasuke's place, she said, waiting for the boy to sit down before turning to the tense Uchihas. You'll have to excuse me. You see, I spent a long time recovering from my pregnancy. And today, for the first time in a while, I was able to leave our neighborhood. We were looking for a place to rest and grab a bite to eat. I nodded toward the tea house. And we accidentally bumped into Sasuke over there, I said, pointing to a small alley on the opposite side of the road. Have I satisfied your curiosity, young man? Yeah. My apologies. Oh, what can you say? Ka-san. Aunt. These screams made me widen my eyes in surprise and leave the table. I almost fell under the onslaught of two hurricanes. Hina-chan, Niji-kun, where are you from? Tesen lost you, the little girl responded immediately. And we convinced Uncle to go look for you. Auntie, you were nowhere to be found, Niji said, offended, making me laugh. Hey, Bizashi said in a sepulchral voice. Oh, I giggled, hiding behind Erasure, who stood up to greet the chief. Don't order me to be executed, order me to be spared. The Uchihas watched the free show with genuine interest and complete incomprehension. Sure, most Hyugas are nuts, but here they're playing this role. Hey! Izashi's eye twitched. What is this? He waved a piece of paper covered with writing in front of me. A note, I said, looking at the man with resentment. I just went for a walk. You practically never let me outside the house. I'm starting to go crazy within these four walls. I'd already walked around them, but I didn't bother to elaborate. His ardor to scold me diminished, and after a couple of deep sighs, he completely disappeared. So what are we going to do with her? He asked the children. Love, feed, and never give up. We recited the memorized phrase in 3 voices. The entire tea room, including the unwitting spectators, laughed, and within a couple of minutes, our table had become quite crowded. To my surprise, Hizashi took the red-eyed presents quite calmly. He simply glanced at Sasuke and said with a sigh, "Everything is clear with you." I had no answer to that, so I just shrugged and smiled. Hinata, Niji, and Sasuke, as befits children, quickly found common ground. Erasure also found common ground with the older Uchihas. I was pleased. We had a good time, but unfortunately not for long. So, after saying goodbye to the boys, I began to mentally prepare myself for a brain-fucking experience. And it's very sad when it's not you who's having it, but you. After saying goodbye to the Uchihas, I was pulled home. Hey, do you even have any idea what the consequences will be? What are you talking about, Hizashi? The man shook his head and looked at me seriously. Hi. I sighed, turning my gaze to the children running ahead, constantly fiddling with erasure. I understand, but I don't accept it. You know yourself that this confrontation is pointless, stupid prejudices that have grown into paranoia. These children are no different from mine, except for the clan name. And, Cammy, I can't. I don't see the point in this feud. A power struggle? A more honorable place on the council? This feud, as you put it, has existed since the time of the founders. Frankly, I prefer to see the Uchiha as allies. But the elders and my brother won't support our opinion. Even if they don't support me, I won't give up my convictions. The kunoichi in you is awakened, Izashi chuckled. I can't believe you're willing to go against Hayashi. Better late than never. I smiled brightly at the man and turned my attention to the children. Hina-chan, Niji-kun, if you tear off Arashi-kun's arms, he, unfortunately, won't be able to teach you anything. Sorry, they said in unison. Hayashi glared at me, but couldn't bring anything against him. I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd given him notice. I'd left Tamao to keep an eye on Hanabi, and Erasure had confirmed the story about my escort. I smiled serenely, irritating the man even more. Making Hayashi angry had become my favorite pastime. Could it be that he still hadn't gotten used to me, even after so much time had passed? I'm approaching the end of my 3rd month in this world, and the 2nd week since accepting myself as hate. I think I've accomplished what some people can't in a year. First, I started training openly. I had to endure Hayashi's angry glares and nagging, but the surprised looks on my clanmates' faces at my zeal more than made up for it. As I predicted, I had the element, which is a phenomenon for my clan. Tamao finally managed to obtain the Kanoshi chakra for me. Erasure helped her with this, and he seamlessly, harmoniously, and somehow naturally integrated into my constant circle of friends, consisting of the children, Tamao, and Hizashi, who joined in from time to time. So, the Saishitsuhenka, or 5 great changes of natural attributes. Each element is unique in its own way and feels different, which is easily seen with the Byakugan. The test to determine the element is simple. Just run chakra through a piece of paper. Fire will burn, wind will cut, water will become wet, and earth will crumble. Mine was cut. As I learned from the scrolls, mastering wind chakra has 3 levels, strengthening natural affinity, increasing the scale of change, and combining with jutsu. I completed the leaf-cutting stage in about 3 days, but haven't started the second stage yet. I decided to first study the memory I'd inherited and brush up on my clan jutsu, since remembering is one thing, doing it is quite another. Another very useful and beneficial technique is Kayatenka, or chakra shape-shifting. It regulates the power and range of techniques. Combining Kayatenka and Saishitsu Henka significantly enhances ninjutsu. Changing the nature and shape of chakra is important for the effectiveness of techniques, but how exactly it's applied and how original it is are also important. My next foray into the village was official. Well, not official, as Hayashi was busy with work, and I just dropped by to let him know I was leaving, grabbed the kids, Tamao, and Erasure, and took off. And now, our whole group is leisurely strolling through the streets of Konoha, tucking into Dango and Dorayaki. Hi-san. Recognizing the screaming man as Sasuke, I turn around and wave hello to the oncoming Uchiha. But a treacherous thought creeps into my mind that these dark-eyed ones are becoming too many in my life. My little ones have already become attached to Sasuke. Good to see you. Out for a walk. Hinata and Niji pounced on Sasuke, and now the three of them were gobbling up the sweets. The older boys just laughed. Help yourself. There's enough for everyone. Tama-chan, Arashi-kun, make sure those bandits don't get to your bags. Hi. The boys answered, smiling. Let's go for a walk, Hi-san, and you? Shisui asked, accepting a treat from Hinata. We decided to replenish our strategic reserves of sweets and a few other small items. We were getting ready to go home. Oka-san. Aunt. Can we walk a little longer? They finished in chorus. Please. Please, Hi-san. Sasuke supported this small rebellion. With your permission, Hi-san, we'll keep an eye on them. Itachi, who had been silent until then, spoke up. He's checking for lice, and it would be insulting, but he's not doing it for nothing. Ha ha, this will be fun. Shisui smiled, putting his hands behind his head. Hi-san? Erasure came closer and looked at me questioningly. He had already become close with these two. They weren't friends, of course, but they had become good acquaintances. Well, I don't mind. Arashi-kun, you can go too. Hi-san, Tama said in a half-whisper, attracting far more attention than she intended. What about Hayashi-sama? What about Hayashi? He's too busy, and the kids need not only training but also communication. So if Sasuke-kun wants to go for a walk with them, I don't see any point in refusing them. Sorry, the girl said, embarrassed. Thank you, Oka-san, we're off. Hinata waved at me. Oh, they'll have a hard time with this trinity. Hello, Hai-chan. Mikoto Uchiha, who, by the way, heard almost our entire conversation, approached Tama and me. Can I talk to you? Tama-chan, go ahead. The girl hesitated for a second, but bowed and, picking up Arashi's bag, continued on her way. I haven't seen you on the streets of Konoha for a long time. Since about the time I graduated from the academy, I've hardly left the neighborhood. I snorted. But Mikoto-chan, please, let's get straight to the point. I've had enough of this beating around the bush with our elders in Hayashi's company. You don't mind friendship between Sasuke, your daughter and nephew. Should I? Personally, I don't see the point in depriving children of pleasant company because of centuries-old prejudices. I share your opinion. The woman nodded approvingly. But will your husband share it? I didn't like that statement. Or rather, I didn't like the wording. Now it's clear what this conversation is all about. Her clan's position is rather precarious. And if the Hyugas support them, it will give them some sort of foothold, albeit a small one. It's a shame, but this isn't my home world. And I thought I'd finally resign myself to it. Niji's own father will decide who he associates with, and as for Hinata, let's just say my views on the world are much closer to her than her father's. I'll make sure the girl isn't as uptight as in the anime. The woman's eyes twinkled mischievously. We were pleased with each other. Mikoto smiled and struck up a casual conversation, which, as we walked, began to resemble more and more a conversation between two girlfriends. Perhaps that's exactly what we both needed. A friend. Mikoto's eyes were filled with a bright sadness. She misses Kushina very much. I often thought of Marina, too. So, as they say, two lonely souls meet. Somehow, the image of a ray of sunshine with blue eyes flashed through my mind. This will end badly. And how did I agree to this? I shook my head sadly, my head searching the house before me for the infamous masked ninjas. Mikoto just giggled at this and continued her dirty work, namely breaking the Fuin barrier. By the way, this was your idea. Well, I didn't know that you would take everything seriously. There, Purim, Pam! We snuck into Shimura Danzo's house. How and why we ended up in this situation is best left unanswered. Let me just say that two kunoichi without anything to do is very dangerous. Especially when one of them is occasionally bursting with crazy ideas. Shimura is one of the elders of Konohagakure and the head of the semi-legal organization. Ambu no. His respectable patriotism turned into an obsession, and then into madness. Judging by a photograph I found, he was very close to Hiruzen as a child and, by all accounts, quite attractive. He has dark hair, unremarkable but rather pleasant features, a permanent scar on his chin, and yellowish eyes, which are now completely unnoticeable. He's a thorn in the side of the Uchiha clan, and it didn't take much to get Mikoto's attention. A few vague hints, and the woman was fully prepared for battle. Although that wasn't my original goal. I simply wanted to convey to her the idea that Itachi had no business en route, but my newfound friend clearly had a different opinion. As the saying goes, I'll give you an idea. I won't be responsible for the consequences. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about the old man's house. The barrier in the isolated room didn't count. It was this room, in fact, that we ventured into. Besides a pile of documents, we found a scroll with notes. The text seemed incoherent, but using her Sharingan, Mikoto deciphered the gene pool, including the Uchiha eyes and several Byakugan. To say the Uchiha was furious would be an understatement. I'd never seen that side of her before. The harmless, sweet housewife turned out to be a very dangerous, hot-tempered, and powerful kunoichi. I barely managed to calm her down and keep her from doing anything stupid, for she was bent on killing. The only thing that swayed her was the children. Maternal instinct is a terrible thing, after all. Mikoto immediately calmed down and began making Napoleonic plans. Okay, I shook her by the shoulders. First, calm down. Second, first we need to get out of here, but first we need to cover our tracks. Yes, sure. We did a meticulous job of restoring the room to its former glory. Mikoto promised to remove the traces of chakra. I don't know how she did it, but she didn't doubt her battle-hardened friend's word. This foray had given me too much adrenaline. It also turned out that I'm incredibly paranoid. Poor Mikoto had to listen to over 100 of my what-ifs and double-check that we'd done everything just as many times. In the end, after nearly being caught by a rude Ling who appeared out of nowhere, but still escaping unnoticed, we reached the shopping arcade. Please come see us sometime. I want to talk to Fugaku about what we found. He will not be pleased with this news or the method of obtaining it. Everything will be fine. The woman smiled. Well, see you then. Yes. See you later. I tried to keep a low profile for the next few days. At least until I received an invitation for tea from Mikoto through the boys. A rather insistent one. I was about to leave when a sudden thought struck me, and a pleasant warmth spread through my chest. What if I could help? What if they listen? I really wanted to, but I'm Hugo, and they won't believe me without proof. Well, except for Mikoto. And yet, her voice alone wouldn't be enough. With a heavy sigh and a resolution to tackle problems as they arose, I headed toward the Uchiha clan quarters. I held Hanabi with one hand and squeezed Hinata's with the other. Taking the girls isn't the best idea, but as paradoxical as it may sound, they'll ensure this meeting goes smoothly. The clan leader's wife, unarmed and with children, plus an official invitation, no one can find fault with that. but my optimistic mood was dampened by someone I'd rather never cross paths with. He must sense when he's being spoken of in a bad way. We didn't speak, just passed each other on the way. He's of slender build and medium height. His face is slightly oval and covered with battle scars and wrinkles. His nose is slightly convex, his lips pursed. A few greasy strands of hair stick out from the top of his head. A crossed-out cross is etched into his chin. The glance he threw my way was enough. For a second, I even felt like a commodity at the market. My heart sank with treachery. I prayed to every god I knew that this man hadn't noticed anything unusual in his own home. Shimura Danzu was way out of my league. It may sound selfish, and even though the heroes of this story haven't grown up yet, they will be the ones competing with him in the future. I'm not a real shinobi, no matter how much I show off, no matter how many techniques I learn. I'd rather train as a medical nin and go work in a hospital. It's more useful. With these thoughts, I reached the Uchiha quarter where, fortunately, Itachi was already waiting for me. We laughed, drank tea, and shared little details. Mikoto was a wonderful conversationalist, hostess, and just a person. Hinata and Sasuke were delighted to see each other and quickly ran upstairs, while Hanabi briskly explored her surroundings. Ever since the little girl learned to walk, she needed constant supervision. If you let her out, it was all over. The girl amazed everyone with her insatiable curiosity. Fugaku broke our idyll. He entered the kitchen and froze in shock. I must admit, I was quite frightened at that moment and regretted giving in to Mikoto's suggestion. Fugaku clearly doesn't see Hyugas in his house every day. Something tells me I'm the first one. "Hello, Fugaku-san." I stood up and bowed, observing etiquette. The man quickly regained his impenetrable mask. "To what do I owe such an unexpected guest?" He didn't show us the door, and that was just bread. "Well, master and master, let's behave ourselves, and perhaps our acquaintance will bear fruit." "With your permission." I nodded toward the table and, after waiting for permission and pretending not to hear Mikoto's sigh of relief, took my seat. "Mikoto-chan invited me to have tea." "Are you alone?" "With daughters." And, as if overhearing our conversation, Hanabi's rather pleased face peeked out from behind Mikoto, and the sound of footsteps could be heard from above. Hinata and Sasuke had come running toward us. "Oka-san, you could look at Sasuke-kun like Niji and I. He wants to learn his elements." I closed my eyes. The Byakugan's most important ability is its ability to see chakra in the surrounding world and living organisms so thoroughly that even its color can be discerned. I haven't watched the second half of the anime, but in the first, these eyes' abilities clearly aren't fully developed. So I decided to test something. If you focus on the core, the Byakugan allows you to see the presence of elements. The experiments were conducted clandestinely and with Hizashi's express permission, as I was worried about screwing up the process, and my twin was curious. I was very surprised that no one had used them like this before. Looking questioningly at the father of the family and receiving a nod in response, I asked Sasuke to stand a little further away and slowly activated the dojutsu. "Well, what can I say? Are you interested in something specific?" "The elements," the boy readily replied. "Kato," she continued, sensing the boy's distress. "And there are also the beginnings of Raikun. If you find a good sensei, your lightning will rival natural fire. Anything else?" Fugaku's voice sounded interested. He's still too young to say anything specific, but Sasuke has a pretty big core for a 2-year-old, and if he keeps developing, the results could exceed expectations. Clear. Sasuke lit up like a Christmas tree. The happy kids ran off to find their older siblings, obviously wanting to show off. Deciding that Hinata was safe with Sasuke, I settled into a serious conversation. In the anime, Fugaku genuinely wanted to preserve peace in Konoha, so he agreed to the clan's relocation despite the protests of its members, not wanting to make the situation worse than it already was. He even forbade his subordinates from touching Kakashi, who had recently received the clan's greatest treasure, the Sharingan from Obito. He also asked Hiruzen for permission to name his second son after the third's father. Furthermore, Fugaku was wiser than the rest of the clan, so he cooperated with the relocation within the village on the condition that the village moderate its suspicions of him, but eventually lost patience. And it is precisely the latter that should be avoided, or at least delayed for as long as possible. I must admit, you surprised me greatly, Hate. Your actions are quite different from your former self. What, if I may ask, has caused such a change? A rearrangement of priorities, Fugaku-san. Silence reigned. Mikoto's tenseness was making the situation even more difficult. My heart was already in my boots, and she was still sitting there, neither alive nor dead. And the overly calm leader didn't inspire confidence. Mikoto told me everything. What were you thinking? The man asked, still calm but threatening. I closed my eyes. Actually, I'd expected a question like that. I even had a ready answer, but as it happens, it slipped my mind just when I needed it. I had to remember the content and improvise. All the while, praying that such a gimmick would work. I'll be perfectly frank. Yes, until recently, I was completely uninterested in the clan's affairs and led a, rather mediocre life. Thankfully, Cammy, no one interrupted me. On the contrary, they listened very attentively. But with the arrival of the girls, I couldn't just sit on the sidelines anyway, and given certain events, my worldview has been severely shaken. You told me. Mikoto, who had been silent, spoke up. It's very unusual. I agree. So, for several months now, I've been actively involved in clan affairs and keeping a close eye on what's going on in the village. I'm very interested, even perplexed, by the mortality rate of young shinobi. And this concerns not only my clan. It's also no secret that Konoha's leadership believes the Uchiha clan is behind the Kyuubi's attack on Konohagakure. Therefore, they've cut off your clan members from village governance. I closed my eyes, hiding from Fugaku's menacing gaze. I'm also concerned. The Uchiha clan is one of the founding clans, and I personally believe that the leadership acted extremely incorrectly. I sighed heavily. I must admit, I lived a much calmer life when the police, under your leadership, had fewer restrictions. However, the main problem for me is the youth. It sounds funny, considering my previous age. Too many unjustified deaths. Don't ask me how, I can't answer anyway, but I received a tip on a specific elder. They understood without asking me the name. I've been feeling very paranoid lately, so I shared my concerns with Mikoto. Well, somehow it just so happened that we went on a reconnaissance mission. And the rest, I think you already know. Fugaku looked at me intently, but was in no hurry to answer. Mikoto broke the silence. I must say, this elder has settled in quite nicely. She paused for a second, searching for the right word. It's so beautiful, you can't even get close. You can't stop someone from living beautifully, but you can hinder it. I smiled. Sometimes it's even necessary. Hate, were you speaking only for yourself or on behalf of the entire clan? I can only vouch for the side branch so far. The main one is much more conservative, but they're making contact. I'm exaggerating a bit here. Only a few specific individuals are making contact. These are personal issues. I'll give you an answer. And he left. Just like that. He got up and left. I was upset and looked helplessly at Mikoto. But she was smiling contentedly at something. And then she assured me that everything was fine. Sipping fragrant tea, I wondered why I was so fixated on the Uchihas. There are still those who are dissatisfied. It's time to mend fences, though. Was it a mistake to go to drama school as a child? October 10th. I awaited this date like a miracle. No matter how much I wandered the streets, I still couldn't catch sight of the hero of the occasion, known as Uzumaki Naruto. This boy keeps eluding me. Not intentionally, of course. He hardly knows there's a stalker here after him. Attendance at the celebration is optional. and Hayashi gave me 1,001 reasons not to go. I was adamant, and finally got the clan head riled up. He yelled at me for the first time. "It's thawing." I was pleased. And a crack appeared in the ice, and we'll go to the celebration. Obeying some childish whim, I arranged a tea party. Not an elaborate tea ceremony, but a simple, homey one with cookies and sweets. The children were delighted. Even Hanabi, although she didn't yet understand the full charm of the process. Tamao and Erasure happily joined the four of us. Looking at these five, I realized I had given myself over. I had given myself over to the fate that bound me to these children, to their eyes, their laughter, and their dimples. And I will do everything in my power to make them happy. "You're scaring me!" Izashi began critically from the doorway, looking around at our gathering, then nodded to himself and sat down at the table. However, I am a bad influence on him. Hayashi popped his head in for our impromptu tea party. He stood in the doorway with an expression I couldn't understand. Tension immediately filled the room. Would you like to join in?" I asked out of politeness. But he merely shook his head and left. His brother and I exchanged glances, but he could only shrug, as he, too, didn't understand anything. Soon the meal was over. "So, guys, are you ready for training?" "Hooray! Practice!" Hinata jumped up from the table happily. Niji wasn't far behind. Hizashi said his goodbyes. Like a true gentleman, he took on the displeasure of Hayashi and the elders. For that, I'm eternally grateful. That gang of schemers was very unhappy with my new role, and I'm as much of a politician as my guy is a ballerina. I enjoy teaching children, which I took up with enthusiasm. Shinobi children develop very quickly, even too quickly. It's as if they're jumping from one age to another. For example, Niji, he's only 3, but if I didn't know better, I'd give him 5 or 6. At that age, children's main activity is play. It's certainly difficult to present murder as play without damaging their psyches, but judging by the children's eagerness to complete their new assignments, it turned out well. Perhaps I'm overly biased about the teaching methods in this world, but for me, it's like throwing a kitten into a river. He swam, well done, but if he couldn't, that means he was too weak. They should probably start a new education system here. I chuckled, putting down the scroll with medical techniques, and tickled the little girl fussing on my legs. October 10th is the day of mourning and remembrance. It's the day the fox attacked Konoha. It was on this day that many people lost friends and loved ones. During the day, villagers visited the graves to honor the fallen, and in the evenings, a festival was held. All the residents of Konoha who had lost loved ones wanted the demon's Jinchuriki to die as soon as possible, but it was just a dream. Everyone knew the reason, but they remained silent, pretending that it did not concern them. The party was in full swing. The kids were having a blast. Even the twins occasionally forgot themselves and allowed themselves to smile. I couldn't contain my happy laughter. Every now and then, I scanned the crowd for a particular little person, fiddling with a little gift I prepared for him. After all, it was his birthday. Sealed within a small, nondescript scroll was a far more valuable one, at least for an academy student. The scroll was supposed to make the boy's life easier. We, meaning me, Erasure, and Tamao, made notes in it, explaining things we didn't understand, and even just throwing in funny comments. Even Niji and Hinata chimed in. They wouldn't let me approach him openly, because they were watching him quite closely. At least 2 Ambu were following him around the clock. And who knows, maybe they were rootlings. At least this way I could help. I was distracted from my sad thoughts by a boy who practically ran into me. To my surprise, I recognized the little brat as Kiba, and the girl who ran up as his sister, Hana. She was shooting murderous glances at her younger brother, constantly apologizing, causing him to cling to me like a drowning man. I briefly imagined the situation from a different perspective and laughed, patted Kiba on his chestnut-colored head, and suggested he join the children. He quickly ran off, his eyes sparkling with joy and his white teeth grinning. I assured the suspiciously narrow girl that all was well and offered to join her. She agreed. After a short while of conversation and incessant childish laughter, the suspicious girl was surprised and then downright charmed. In any case, she left our company with a friendly smile and an approving twinkle in her eyes. As soon as it got dark, the Uchihas joined our noisy group. It was amusing to watch Sasuke's jealous reaction to the newest member of the group, though he warmed up pretty quickly. Things were worse with the adults, however. Fugaku and Hayashi remained cool, Hizashi remained silent, and only Mikoto and I managed to soften the tension. After a few jabs in the ribs, Hizashi finally deigned to express his point of view. Fugaku thawed. I glanced at Hayashi's face. His gaze was more lively. It made him look very handsome. My heart began to beat faster, betraying me. I'm already married to him, right? I carefully placed my hand on his elbow. He looked me in the eye with a slight shudder. I smiled guiltily, stubbornly pushing away my embarrassment. Hayashi raised his arm to give me a more comfortable position. A piece of ice fell off. Towards the end of the festival, Mikoto and I, leaving the children with the men, decided to stroll the aisles of fabrics. They were magnificent. Silk, satin, cotton, everything your heart desires. I was distracted from admiring all this wealth by the sound of a scuffle and drunken swearing. Apparently, the heavily intoxicated men were chasing someone. I glanced at Mikoto, frozen beside me. She had turned pale, her lips pursed, and I felt as if she wanted to run. She looked into my eyes, and I saw a silent plea in them. Slowly, it began to dawn on me who had fallen victim to the drunks. Feeling the blood drain from my face, I whispered under my breath, "Naruto." Jumping up from my spot, I immediately ran towards the noise, knowing for sure that Uchiha had followed me. There were 3 attackers, all Chunin. We had no trouble neutralizing the ninja, who were barely able to stand. Honestly, the moment I saw the injured boy, I was frightened even myself. My ki even scared Mikoto, who was looking at me with amazement, as if she'd seen a ghost. I really wanted to kill these people. Kill them, and with extreme cruelty. I carefully lifted Naruto into my arms. He was practically devoid of life. His clothes were torn, and every exposed part of his body was covered in terrible bruises and cuts. Something dark stirred within me. I had never experienced such emotions and sensations before. And with an icy calm, I realized that if it weren't for the boy in my arms, I would have stabbed the nearest of the rising men in the heart without hesitation. "It's a demon." "No, he's a boy." "A little one." "A boy," I said crisply, clutching the crippled little body to me and simultaneously trying to heal the most dangerous of the injuries. "How can you?" The men began to protest. Enough. Fugaku and Hayashi appeared out of thin air next to us. They shielded the 3 of us with their broad backs and looked coldly at the smashed-to-the-drink people. "Taking out your anger on a child is baseness, unworthy of a shinobi," Fugaku said. "Agree." "Hey!" Mikoto touched my hand. "Let's go!" "Naruto needs help urgently." "Of course, let's go." I looked at the back of the man, whom I never expected to see here. Sensing my gaze, he turned slightly and nodded almost imperceptibly. Mikoto tugged at my shoulder, and I yielded. Together, we made our way to the hospital, keeping a close eye on the boy to ensure he received all the necessary care, and just before leaving, I slipped a gift under his pillow. Leaving the medical abode, we walked in silence. Upon returning, we were unable to ease the tension so soon after our families had said their goodbyes. We handed Kiba over to his sister and left the festival. I shifted my weight uncertainly and, taking a deep breath, entered the office. "Hayashi, are you busy?" But there was no answer. Upon entering, I saw such a sweet, homely scene that my heart sank. Hayashi was asleep at his desk, his hands behind his head. I approached him silently, barely touching him. He immediately opened his sleepy eyes. "You should rest." I tried to smile softly, but I think it came out guilty again. And again, there was that strange look of his. Let's go to bed. I don't know who possessed me to say that. Surprise flashed in my interlocutor's eyes, but then he blinked, somewhat stunned, nodded, and stood up. For just a moment, I thought I saw another child standing before me. Life went on as usual. I took up medical ninjutsu in earnest. Advanced medicine in this world is represented by medical nin, who are a rare commodity. But such a medic shinobi can literally piece a person back together, and all they need is a high level of control, medical chakra, time, and experience. Of course, I doubt my abilities are up to that, but it will significantly increase my chances of survival. To be a good medic nin, one must be able to control one's chakra to a level far greater than that required for most martial arts. This was equally important for a Fuin, and so training required exhaustion. Fuin is accessible to many, although without an Uzumaki predisposition, mastering it is an order of magnitude more difficult, and working with seals takes much more effort, time, and requires a very high degree of control. While it's possible to master, few would dedicate their lives to it. Therefore, various scrolls and seals, the result of painstaking handcraft, while not unique, are rare and even rarer for sale. But Fuin are such a thing. How do shinobi live without them? I'm not even talking about super complex ligatures. A basic, elementary Fuin that seals objects, living beings, chakra, along with a wide range of other things within another object, and other useful Fuin jutsu trivia. Hi, Sama, a soft, quiet voice says. A girl of average height, wearing the traditional Hyuga clan garb, approached me from behind. Yuki had initially been merely a replacement for Tamao, whom I had sent on vacation due to missions, often forcibly. But the young woman proved herself to be quite a pleasant person. It's okay, Yuki-chan, I smiled. It's just... I raised my head and looked at the cloudless sky. It's been so long since I got sick. A lot has happened. You have brought about many changes, madam. The girl laughed softly. How many times have I asked you not to address me like that? Oka-san! Oka-san! Shursue-san and Itachi-san have arrived. Hinata's joyful voice rang out. Andy, we're going! Niji supported her. I stood up easily and went to greet the guests. Both the elder Uchihas, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji greeted me with polite bows. Sasuke smiled happily and waved, earning him a light slap on the back of the head, but immediately corrected himself by bowing. Good afternoon, boys, Ino-chan. How long are you going to be gone today? No. I have a mission tomorrow, and it's a holiday. Shursue put his hands behind his head and smiled mischievously. So, I think we'll be back an hour or two early. I hope I'll get to eat some of your delicious cookies before I go. Shursue, Itachi hissed, closing his eyes in embarrassment. I think that can be arranged. I chuckled. Okay, go ahead. Yuki-chan and I packed some treats if you're hungry. The third time, Itachi exhaled. What? She asked again. You're already the third mother, with gifts, the guy explained. I looked at the children, noticing a few more baskets, and laughed. Our treats were left at home, and the older ones breathed a sigh of relief. As I was entering the house, I heard a cry that made me smile. I'm not late today, Dadabeo. Naruto, fortunately for Mikoto and me, soon became part of the children's group. This happened without my involvement and entirely on their own initiative. There's nothing more selfless than childhood friendship. If you trace its origins, you'll often stumble upon the most superficial, almost laughably empty reason for its emergence. That's why I was overjoyed when Tamao and Hinata brought me Niji, Sasuke, and Naruto, all covered in mud and fighting. Mikoto and I couldn't stop being overjoyed, so the boy often blushed when he was squeezed or given an extra piece of food, and when Naruto learned from Hinata who had given him his birthday present, he even began living in 3 houses. Walking out into the garden, I take a deep breath and can't help but smile happily as I remember everything that happened to me. It came as a surprise to me when the head of the Inuzuka clan caught me in the village and took me to her home. Despite her wild nature, she was quite friendly, and I saw no point in denying her company. Thus began my friendship with Sum, and her eldest daughter, Hannah, began occasionally taking turns babysitting Itachi, Shursui, and Erishur. And some time later, I ran into the person who became my idol, Yoshino Nara, a remarkable, stern, and powerful woman. As it turned out, she was specifically seeking a meeting with me. Extremely emotional, practical, and uncompromising, she won my affection within the first 5 minutes of our conversation. After that, a rather interesting quartet formed, and with it, the Uchiha, represented by Mikoto, gained widespread recognition. Through Yoshino, I met Akimichi and Yamanaka, and through Sum, Aburame. And before I knew it, we were gathering as a rather large group of women, having jokingly called our gathering the Union of Young Shinobi Mothers. I didn't expect to be met with 6 appraising glances that nearly made me choke. Thus, our female alliance was formed, and the group of children gained new friends. The men couldn't help but notice their wives' activities, so they all had a talk. While the initial plan was for them to talk to us, it turned out to be the exact opposite. The men were told where they had gone wrong. They warmed to the idea, and within 5 minutes they were peacefully drinking tea and discussing the weather. The prospect of an alliance between the clan leaders appealed to everyone. I also told Hayashi about the Byakugan I'd found en route. You should have seen his face. But the story of how we'd actually found out about the old man's hiding place really angered him. His tightly pressed lips confirmed it. That same day, I had my first scandal. And while I didn't feel guilty, I wasn't about to let things slide. And that stubborn man was offended. He was offended. Throwing all respect aside, I simply showed up in his office and, after throwing out a number of stunned elders, told him everything I thought about the entire village in general, and him in particular. I told him how afraid I was of Shimura, how I feared for the children's future, and I barely managed to keep from blurting out too much, even missing the moment when I started crying. I came to, quietly sobbing in Hayashi's arms. He stared thoughtfully at the wall, resting his chin on the top of my head and slowly stroking my back. All he said to me were 2 words. I understand. I couldn't remember that day without blushing. I was confused about my feelings for one particular member of the Hyuga clan, and I didn't know what to do about it. With a heavy sigh, I turned to the still silent girl. Well, let's go! We should get ready. Hinata's birthday is just around the corner. Hi, Sama. Are you sure everything's alright? Don't get me wrong. You've been more thoughtful than usual lately. Never mind. Well, let's get to work. I clapped my hands and smiled cheerfully. Ah, hi, Sama. We'll be celebrating intimately. If that's even true of the entire clan. While preparations were underway, I frowned and bit my lip. I couldn't come up with an idea to free Niji from the subjugation seal. I even briefly considered simply talking to Hayashi, but dismissed it as completely pointless. Not in this world. So I needed to figure out a way to do it without the clan head and the elders. This task was quite difficult, but not impossible. As the saying goes, there are no hopeless situations. There are only situations where you don't like the outcome. To my shame and disgrace, I couldn't come up with anything. There was no one to turn to for help in such a delicate situation. I hugged Hanabi, watching the happy children return home. Guiltily, I looked at the smiling boy, enthusiastically telling me something, and couldn't hold back my tears. Suddenly, I felt 2 warm, childish hands on my cheeks. My little girl, cupping my face in her hands, looked up at me with her big lavender eyes. Hey, Kai! The little girl drawled and, it seemed to me, shook her head disapprovingly. My little angel. I smiled and tossed the girl. Unfortunately, not having found a solution on my own, I went to the carpet to see Hizashi. Thank you. the man said, listening carefully. A few months ago, I would have thought you were crazy. But now, I think we shouldn't do anything for now. My son is happy, and without the seal, we'll put him in danger and stir up trouble. A member of a branch house, even without the seal. He smiled sadly. Hinata will certainly not take advantage of her position, nor will she allow others to take advantage of her. Despite her young age, our little Heim is growing up quite smart and extremely active, and also, he chuckled and looked me in the eyes. She has a strong sense of justice instilled in her. So I'm at peace about my son. I smiled guiltily and sniffled. Hizashi merely shook his head and left the garden. During this conversation, I had no idea that guests from Kumogakure had just arrived at Konoha's gates. I had safely skipped over Niji's ceiling, not wanting to be there. Although, to be honest, I simply couldn't look the boy in the eyes. It felt like I betrayed him. Although, in a way, I had. And that only made me sicker. I spent the entire birthday party, which we spent in a small circle, if you can call an entire clan that, on tenterhooks. At some point, I lost sight of Hinata and Niji. A knot of worry coiled in my stomach. And as luck would have it, Mayu-san spoke to me. She's the only elder who's friendly towards me, and distracted by her, I missed the moment Hayashi left the room. Hizashi! I caught the younger one. Something has happened or will happen. He tried to object, but seeing that I was panicking, he suggested we go have a look around. So we did. He went to the east wing. I went to the west. And as soon as I heard the noise, it became clear that it would have been better if Hizashi had been in my place. And she was right. Because I rushed into the room, Hayashi was distracted by me and was wounded. The katana left a bloody trail across the man's chest. The Kumo shinobi tried to escape, but I blocked his path, not forgetting to shout at the white as a sheet. Children. Together with Hayashi, we managed to stop the Godfather. And only the fact that he was an honored guest of the Kage saved his life. I knew how this story could end. But just as I was breathing a sigh of relief, looking at the unconscious shinobi, Hayashi began to fall to the side. I managed to catch him only just before he reached the floor. He was quite heavy. After a quick inspection, I couldn't contain the horror that gripped me. His entire chest was soaked in blood. Carefully removing the top of his kimono, I swallowed hard. A deep wound ran across his entire torso. Hayashi! I used my mystical hand in an attempt to heal the man. Hayashi! Don't you dare close your eyes. I'm coming. I'm coming. Shoo! He wiped away my tears with his blood-stained fingers and smiled with the corners of his lips. Don't you dare. Now I'll cure you, and you'll be looking at me with displeasure and constantly making comments again. Hayashi, please, I whispered pitifully. Shinobi burst into the room, one of whom I barely recognized as Hizashi. I barely remember what happened next. My last clear memory was of being pulled away from a rather overly pleased Hayashi. Then my consciousness faded. Jumping out of bed, I immediately went looking for the younger twin. And when I found him, I wasn't thrilled by his shabby appearance. How is he? POV Sarutobi Hijiran. Therefore, the attacker has been caught and will receive the punishment he deserves. But you, my friends, understand that given the current situation, we cannot make any more stringent demands. It's not our position. The gray-haired old man in the Kage hat sat down and sighed wearily. He was tired. Konoha was crumbling in his hands like a sand sculpture. Like leaves falling in autumn, Konoha had lost countless fine shinobi and even just good people. And now he was sitting at a jonin meeting, trying to maintain the fragile peace with Kumo after a shinobi stationed at the embassy nearly killed the head of one of the largest clans in Konoha. Although he, like many present, disliked the prospect of allowing the Reikage to punish the culprit himself, he knew in his mind that this peace treaty was necessary. The clan heads are dissatisfied and are not shy about discussing the situation, just like they would politely bicker. Hokage-sama, the dark-haired woman sitting next to him addressed him politely. You look tired, You should get some sleep and rest. Thank you. Kazuran allowed himself to smile quite sincerely. He often saw this woman on the streets of the village, always in the company of children. Now she was pale and tired, with dark circles under her eyes, and she sat unnaturally upright, as if she'd swallowed a stick. She had been hit the hardest by the incident, yet she had found the strength to come here on behalf of her husband and to act politely and kindly. She had spoken only a few words throughout the entire meeting, avoiding any verbal exchanges, and when they tried to engage her, she had responded with dignity. No matter how hard the old man tried to remain neutral toward the woman, someone else's concern was pleasant, especially sincere, without ulterior motives. Especially when you're an old man, tired of all this military chaos. Especially when circumstances have forced you to return to the hated post of Kage. Sarutobi pulled out his pipe and was about to light it when a small woman's hand grabbed his. A deathly silence fell over the room. Hokage-sama! She frowned and spoke clearly, loudly, and distinctly. I apologize, but please wait a second. Sum-sama, she addressed the head of the Inuzuka. May I ask you to come over here? At this, the brunette raised her eyebrows in surprise, but nevertheless approached, only to frown a second later and then bare her teeth, inhaling deeply. Poison, the woman spat. And then, it was as if a dam had burst. Everyone started talking at once. Hijiran checked his tobacco in front of everyone, surprised to find that it was indeed a slow-acting poison. Further inspection revealed that it had been poisoned for years, and clearly by someone close to the Sandame, as no one else could have taken the Sandame's personal belongings. A fuin seal, concealing the smell, was also found on the pipe. Sarutobi didn't want to believe it, but the state of his far from youthful body spoke for itself. And again the wife of the head of the Hyuga clan surprised him when he asked how he could thank her. He received a forced smile, a tired look, and a quiet, "Take care of yourself." The old man sat in his house behind closed doors, tears streaming down his cheeks. He was in pain. He was tired. End of Sarutobi Hijiran's POV. As I headed to the clan council, I had no idea how much torment I'd have to endure. Already amazed countless times by Hayashi's composure, who regularly attended such gatherings, I mentally slapped the heads of the men present, who now looked more like market women. I sighed wearily and closed my eyes. I was tired. Everything had gone downhill since that fateful night. Hayashi had lost a lot of blood and damaged several internal organs. He's been unconscious for 3 days now, but the only relief is that his health is no longer in danger. The elders and the main house wanted to charge me with something, but I wasn't thinking clearly, so I nearly killed 2 particularly loud ones, and then I used ki so much that even Hizashi, who was used to it, shied away from me. If Hinata and Hanabi hadn't grabbed me, I probably would have done something terrible. Shimura also stirred. A full-blown persecution had begun. Rumors about the Uchiha were so widespread that it was no wonder they rebelled. People remembered the Fox's attacks, the mysterious disappearances, and much more. The Uchiha could only marvel at how they managed to do everything and everywhere. And yesterday Mikoto came to me, pale, with pursed lips and dark circles under her eyes. They had tried to take Shursue's Sharingan. If it hadn't been for Fugaku's strict orders not to go anywhere alone, the worst would have happened. Shursue and some young jonin managed to escape. But they can't present any evidence yet, which is quietly angering Fugaku, but that doesn't stop him from collecting dirt on the old man, bit by bit. I sighed again. The story was beginning to deviate from the events as written. But by how much? And would it get worse? They looked at me like a museum exhibit. Unnoticed. Of course, probing me, studying me, trying to be downright rude or even cajoling. But thanks to Mayu Hyuga, who was so kind to me, I managed to hold out quite well, and even my defensive posture didn't spoil the picture one bit. This miracle woman not only managed to get me back on my feet, preventing me from falling into despair, but also drilled into me a whole course in etiquette in just 24 hours, though the memory of my former hate also served as a significant aid. The strangest thing for me was the Sandame. I guess I just didn't think the God of Shinobi would be so ordinary. I certainly didn't expect a halo of righteousness or, conversely, greed, but Hijiran turned out to be a perfectly ordinary person. I'd even say a tired one. He genuinely sympathized with my clan, grew irritated by the incessant shouting, and worried about the safety of the village. And his eyes were growing dull. With each passing minute, the longer the meeting dragged on, the duller his gaze became. Having finished his speech, he glanced absently at the faces of those present and sank back into his seat. Finally, unable to bear the sight, he decided to politely hint to Kage about his condition. "Hokage-sama, you look tired. You should sleep and rest a little." Sarutobi merely nodded his head and smiled gratefully. I decided not to intrude, but as soon as he began lighting his pipe, a painfully familiar scent hit my nose. A scent that chilled my blood and made my heart freeze. The poison my father, the one who smelled of gunpowder and herbs, the one who had been with me in my past life, used to bait large animals. This poison was called curare. He learned the recipe from a South American Indian tribe during one of his trips to America. This poison is very dangerous, and I wouldn't be surprised if they use it for murder here. For example, seal the dust in a scroll. When opened, the fine powder turns into gas when exposed to air. The smell of almonds fills everything. A stupid joke. The recipient of such a scroll will think, and, throwing it on the table, go powder their nose or run errands. And these will be their last words. They will suddenly feel their heart pounding, but they won't understand the connection between the sudden malaise and the smell filling the room. Then their legs will begin to buckle. Their head will ache unbearably, and breathing will become difficult. These are the first symptoms, followed by uncontrollable vomiting. The person doesn't have time to realize what's happening to them and loses consciousness. And within minutes, their lungs stop working, their body is racked by convulsions, the heart no longer pumps blood, and death occurs. Painless. Quick. Merciful. I couldn't mistake this poison for any other. The scent of almonds was mingled with a barely perceptible hint of resin. But where did it come from? And what in this world is it made of? And judging by the dosage, they're trying to delay death. Of course. Tobacco. It will look exactly like that. Like the old man has smoked himself dry. Cursing, I managed to grab Kazuran's hand. Frantically trying to figure out what to do, and feeling everyone's eyes on me in the ensuing silence, I spoke my words clearly and slowly. Any false move could cost me my life. "Hokage-sama, I apologize, but please wait a second." "Sum-sama," an interesting thought occurred to me. "May I ask you to come over here?" She looked at me in surprise, but still came over, only to frown a second later and then bare her teeth, taking a deep breath. "Poison," she spat. Chaos erupted after the words were spoken, and it didn't subside until the unfortunate Kazuran checked his tobacco and pipe in front of everyone. A seal was found on the pipe, either forgotten or not updated in time, and as a result, the entire village knew about it within 5 minutes of the meeting's end. Exhausted and rather confused, Sandame wanted to thank me somehow, as he'd seemingly saved my life. But the best he could do for me was stay alive. I had little strength left, so I just shook my head, smiled, and asked him to take care of himself. Upon returning to the clan quarter, I was met by Hinata and Niji with the news that Hayashi had finally regained consciousness. This news cheered me up, and mustering my courage, I decided to talk to Niji, whom I still felt guilty about. "Hinata, sunshine, leave us for a while." "Kasan? I won't eat it." I grinned and pushed my daughter towards the shoujo. Dangling my legs off the wooden platform, I patted the chair next to me, inviting my nephew to sit next to me. The bandage on his forehead made me feel even more guilty. "How are you feeling?" I began hesitantly. "Niji." I sighed heavily and sat down, half turned to face the boy. "Forgive me. I couldn't find a way to escape the seal." I beg you. Ahem. Forgive me, if you can, my dear. It's not your fault, Auntie, the boy said, confused. Otto-san explained everything to me. I never intended to blame you. Auntie, I didn't know my Kachan at all, and you? The boy blushed, looking away. You're just like a real Kachan to me, that is. Oh. I didn't let Niji finish, yanking him sharply towards me, hugging him tightly, and burying my face in his head. Also, I could burst into tears the next second. The boy turned pale and started to apologize, but I stopped him. I love you too, Niji. You have no idea how afraid I was that you'd be mad at me. I promised, but I didn't do anything. I worked myself up, made things up. I was afraid to look you in the eye. And yet, I'm supposed to be an adult. After which we both started crying, or rather, I continued to cry, and my nephew buried his nose in my shoulder and quietly sobbed. Somehow, having calmed down, I began to sing softly, stroking the boy's hair. It seemed so simple. Give love to the world. But unfortunately, the stars. Not everyone is given wings to fly. So much love in one heart. Angel of the soul forbid. People can't live without childhood. And children can't live without love. In warm hands, even the coldest ice will melt. Faith in the eyes. There are no other people's children. The shoujo quietly moved away, and Hinata quietly approached us with Hanabi in her arms. New dawn. Everything can change for the better. Hinata sat down next to me and laid her head on my shoulder, hugging my free arm, and Hanabi crawled between me and Niji, clinging tightly to both of us. Give me your hand. Every soul needs a family. If faith lives in you. If you have a lot of strength, you can hide it from the wind. Those who are left alone. Tamao and Erishur appeared in the doorway like silent shadows. Just don't be afraid. Open the door to the angel. Will become a heavenly reward. A house full of new love. In warm hands. Even the coldest ice will melt. Hizashi appeared from around the corner with a calm expression, carrying a tray of fragrant tea. Hayashi followed him, a little awkwardly. Faith in the eyes. There are no other people's children. New dawn. Everything can change for the better. Give me your hand. Every soul needs a family. After tea, my mood returned to normal, and, having sent the children off, I told the twins everything that had happened at the clan meeting, while shamelessly, but carefully, settling myself on the shoulder of the eldest. But our idol was destroyed by a ringing female voice. This is outrageous. Yoshino and Shikaku Nara visited our house. While the former was loudly indignant and gesticulating, the latter sat down calmly, leaning against the wall next to us. Yoshino-san, what's got you so worked up? I managed to ask before her monologue resumed. Shikaku told me everything. She cast a withering glance at the men. How could you have missed it? The whole village is in an uproar, the Inuzuka chief announced, jumping off the fence in a seriously irritated voice. Of course she'll be all the rage. Yoshino threw up her hands. It's not every day you find out someone systematically poisoning the Hokage. After 5 disapproving glances, Nara finally turned down the volume. Her husband pointed out that if all the heads of the major clans flocked to our mansion, it would raise a ton of suspicion and questions, and there would be plenty of prying ears on neutral territory. Everyone was pondering this, when Yoshino suddenly returned to the poisoning issue. Who do you think is to blame? I wouldn't want to see such a gift in my tea mug someday. And then I froze. What options do we have? Shimura? Definitely. But it can't be that simple, can it? Orochimaru, perhaps? Tsum said. I completely forgot about this guy. I wonder if he's as creepy in real life as he is in the anime. I doubt it. Chikaku's voice interrupted his train of thought. Orochimaru wouldn't have made such a mistake. He would have acted more subtly and thoughtfully. Why don't we just ask him? I suggested, tensing up and activating my Byakugan. Following my gaze, Everyone immediately straightened up, and Inuzuka even grabbed her weapon. A shadow moved toward us from the shadow of a tree. Orochimaru, the white snake, was approaching us. "It seems we've already attracted unnecessary attention. Problematic," Shikaku said philosophically. Suppressing the rising panic, I deactivated the jutsu. The man with the snake-like pupils and eyes the color of molten gold didn't frighten me. Apprehension and mistrust, yes, but not fear. Nevertheless, his power was palpable, even without the Yuki. It made me nervous and tormented by the speculation about why he had come here. And I wasn't the only one. "Orochimaru," Hayashi said. "Why did you come?" "Tea?" I blurted out before I realized what I'd said. Judging by Sanon's expression, and the others as well, they weren't expecting such a question. Everyone's fighting spirit seemed to have faltered. He was strange. Not at all like I remembered him from my previous life. Disheveled, rumpled, but with his head held high. He reminded me of the tin soldier from the fairy tale. He was left alone with his demons, and no matter what happened, he wouldn't give in. He would stand firm, and he wouldn't break. "I wouldn't refuse," he drawled, but didn't approach. "I've noticed that the Hyuga clan has recently become close to other major clans, the Uchiha, the Inuzuka." Some bared her teeth warningly. "Nara," Yoshino frowned. "Aburame, Yamanaka, Akimichi." He closed his eyes and looked me straight in the eye. "And I also know that one particular Hyuga was involved. And it's not just me. Some people really don't like the little Jinchuriki having friends. Children make friends very quickly. That's what they're children for." I spread my arms, pressing a little closer to Hayashi's warm side, and to the Sanon's chuckle I added, "And what difference does it make whether they're heirs or not?" Orochimaru approached and, ignoring the wary glances, accepted the cup of tea I offered him. The men began a conversation that, for some reason, I felt like comparing to a naval battle. Incidentally, they were clearly enjoying it, which couldn't be said for the women in our group. Yoshino grew increasingly gloomy, and some increasingly irritated. When my modest person was mentioned a couple of times in the dialogue, I couldn't resist. "Orochimaru-sama, let's stop beating around the bush. Please, I'm a lousy diplomat, and the amount of confusion you've been throwing at each other is giving me a headache. Just tell me what you need." The man bared his teeth, nodded, and, looking into my eyes, exhaled. Freedom. Silence reigned. No one expected such a turn of events. "Right now, I'm tightly tied to a mutual friend of ours who's crossed everyone. The more power, the more vanity. And vanity, like pride, is something people really love to stroke. And I don't like that it's being done at my expense." Closing my eyes, I sighed heavily. I had no idea how to act in this situation, but Hayashi made the decision for me. Guarantees. "Distrust is a good thing." The serpent nodded approvingly. "I've been mentally bookmarked. I've already removed the loyalty one and the obedience one too. To remain, oppressive and distorting ones. But nothing's stopping him from installing new ones. I've already tried to bypass the bookmarks, but it didn't work. And if their influence isn't stopped now, nothing will help my consciousness. I'll be again." The man fell silent, unwilling to continue. "Experiment on people," I said sullenly, rubbing the bridge of my nose. "What?" Sum and Yoshino exclaimed. The twins and Shikaku's expressions darkened. Orochimaru's head snapped up, and he looked at me intently. "Yes, on his own," he smiled wryly. "He can't handle it." Commentary on Chapter 6. Snowball. Katerina Babinko, there are no other people's children. Chapter 7. Hope. I've never liked holidays since childhood. My family had a problem with alcohol consumption, so any gathering ended in a scandal. The only exception was, and still is, New Year's. I don't know why, but this holiday gave me hope for the best and made me believe that next year would be, at least a little, kinder. In this life, New Year's changed its name to Oshigatsu, Santa Claus to Hotai-Osho or Sagatsu-san, and the Christmas tree became Katamatsu. This time, too, the spirit of the holiday dispelled sad and negative thoughts, and I enthusiastically set about decorating the house. After visiting the fair, we set up several machibana, hung a couple of hamani, kumade, and takurabun boats, while the girls spent the entire day playing with their daruma. Then we went to the shrine for the kakizome ceremony. New Year's here is completely different from how I remember it. Oshigatsu is traditionally celebrated with family, with a feast or amasoka, but Arrow falls on the last day of December. The occasion isn't associated with laughter and joy. On this day, it's customary to reflect and reminisce about the events of the past year, and a personalized message on a ready-made card, with the sender's personal signature, is considered a sign of special respect. Gifts are traditionally given in the pre-New Year period. Those younger in age and position give them to older relatives, as well as to those higher up on the hierarchical ladder, but it is not customary to exchange gifts between people of the same age and social status. But I, sort of, forgot about this. I looked at my family, complete and happy, at my many friends, true and sincere, at my happy daughters and nephew, at the shy and equally joyful Uchiha boys in my charges, at Hayashi, Hizashi, and Fugaki diligently hiding their smiles, at the laughing Mikoto and Yoshino, at Naruto and the Inazukas roaring with laughter, at the smiling Yamanaka and Akimichi. We may have spent most of the holiday in this small family circle, but my friends are also my family. So I took advantage of the tradition of dropping by to visit first. The boys and I left no one without a gift, even if it was just small things, but we made them ourselves, and that was really nice. After all, we deserve a little happiness, right? Mikoto's POV. She appeared unexpectedly. Itachi, Sasuke, and Shursui had simply returned home and told me about the strange Hyuga. What they told me was so out of place that at first I didn't even believe it. But then I saw her. A woman surrounded by children chatting happily, and Sasuke, who had been walking beside me just a second ago, was already running after the Hyuga couple. Her voice, clear but pleasant to the ear, greeted my sons and nephew very warmly. Conversation struck up. Oh, how she reminded me of Kushina at that moment. The same enthusiasm, the same smile, except that there was no devilry dancing in her eyes, only a mischievous sparkle. Hyuga defied explanation. Her train of thought was seemingly simple and straightforward, yet at the same time astonishing and inconsistent. She was like the wind, fickle and unpredictable. It was she who brought a veritable storm into the lives of many. But I'm grateful to her. She's one of the few who went against the grain. She's fighting for herself, her little happiness, and her family. Sasuke has many friends now, and Itachi has started smiling sincerely and often again. Hate, albeit indirectly, allowed me to help Naruto. She is the wind of change that blew over Konoha. The threat looming over our families is great. Will we cope? Are we too late? Will the wind withstand the headwinds? End of Mikoto's POV. Hayashi's POV. Standing in the shade by the open shoujo, I watched my wife conduct yet another training session with her daughters and nephew. While such games can hardly be called training, there was no doubt about their effectiveness. The children were developing at the right pace, and with a well-established routine. I'd never looked at her before. I'd never paid attention. It was a marriage of convenience, so any deep feelings were out of the question. She was quiet, and at times it seemed as if she didn't even exist. But everything changed. After Hanabi's birth and her prolonged coma, it was as if she had become a different person. At first, this was incredibly infuriating. She began snapping back and voicing her opinions too often on this or that issue. It was infuriating, irritating, and at the same time touching. I watched the elders' contorted faces with secret pleasure. Hay never overstepped her bounds, maintained a polite tone, and often tried to interact with the elders as little as possible. But her rare phrases made the old men go crazy, which, unfortunately, in most cases led to my headaches. Then I noticed she'd grown closer to her brother. I watched it from the sidelines for a long time, but all their family gatherings, training sessions, and tea parties irritated me beyond measure. I watched them change rapidly, first Hate, then Hinata, Niji, Hizashi. In some way I couldn't understand, this insufferable woman was winning the hearts of the Branch family. And then, she befriended an Uchiha, which provoked an extremely angry response from the main family and the elders, with the exception of Mayusan. She began defending my wife to the clan, and, surprisingly successfully. Some time later, Hade bursts into my office and tells me about the stolen Byakugan and how she broke into Shimura Danzo's house with Uchiha Mikoto. Unheard of. And my attempt to reason with this insufferable creature ended in her hysteria. She screamed through tears, and determination burned in her eyes. She was afraid. She was afraid of Shimura and what this madman could do. She was afraid for her daughters, afraid for the clan. At some point, I pulled her close and waited for her hysteria to subside. That's when I first realized how small she was compared to me. Small and terribly stubborn. When she demanded to go to the festival, I wasn't surprised, though I tried to resist. When the Uchiha joined us, I wasn't surprised. What was unexpected was a woman's hand taking my elbow, an embarrassed look, and an apologetic smile. When a Jinchuriki appeared in my daughter's company, I was wary, but it was just as unexpected for Hate, so I didn't dwell on it. When heirs of other clans appeared around Hinata and Niji, I began to realize I was missing something. And I missed her. Loud, flighty, unruly, yet warm and homely Hate. As soon as I reached out to her, they accepted me, and began helping me mend my relationships with my daughters and brother. Now I definitely won't miss her again. End of Hayashi's POV. The sun was setting, and the streets of Kanahagakure were rapidly emptying. The woman, having covered herself with her shoujo, sat between her daughter's futons. Gently stroking their hair, she began to sing softly. The day will fall like a shadow on the backs of the roofs. You run to me from the hustle and bustle. With heart and tired soul, you will find peace in my love. Caress in silent silence. You will entrust your rest to me again, and keeping your breath, I will wrap you in sweet sleep. The world is getting quieter and quieter. The night paints pictures. I will open the door to peace. Oh! She sighed in surprise and turned around abruptly, feeling someone's hand on her shoulder. You scared me. You shouldn't have disturbed the wounds unnecessarily. Did something happen? The tall man ignored the last sentence. No, nothing. I was just thinking. She shook her head and smiled. Hey! The brown-haired man addressed his wife softly. The woman looked at her interlocutor in surprise. Let's go to bed. You're tired, he said, gently pushing the woman toward the bedroom as she stood up. She only smiled at his actions and allowed herself to be led away. Hayashi! She squeezed her husband's hand a little tighter. What? Everything will be fine, right? The man hesitated before answering. Only at the threshold of the room did he confidently say, Will. Commentary on Chapter 7. Hope. In Japan, the god Hotaisho is traditionally considered Santa Claus. Everyone, children and adults alike, ask him for happiness and good luck. Machibana is similar to Ikebana, but it's traditionally done around New Year's. Japanese people arrange bamboo or willow branches throughout their homes, hanging figurines of plants, flowers, fish, and fruit from them. In the land of the rising sun, it's common to decorate a pine tree instead of a Christmas tree. More specifically, it's a craft made from rice straw, bamboo, and pine, decorated with ferns and tangerines. In coastal regions, Katamatsu is also decorated with seaweed and shrimp. Hameni, arrows to protect the house from evil spirits. Takrabun boats, they are usually filled with lentils. It is believed that deities of luck live in such vessels. Daruma is an eyeless wish doll. Its owner makes a wish and draws one eye. The second can be added when the wish comes true. If this does not happen, the doll is burned in a traditional bonfire on the following new year. Kumate is an amulet that translates as bear's paw and is shaped like a rake used to attract happiness. My VK group https://vk.com/club155230298 Chapter 8 From the Shadows Rudumbu Chiefna frowned as he read the report he just received. Strange movements had begun in the village, which he found very unsettling. The clans had become unusually active, yet nothing was happening and no one knew anything. He'd been particularly worried about the Hyuga clan lately. Usually keeping to themselves, they'd quickly drawn closer to other major clans, especially the Uchiha. The hostility between them, fueled by Shimura, had suddenly begun to soften. This hadn't been his plan at all, and more importantly, he'd never even anticipated it. The man closed his eyes and pursed his lips. The attack on Shursui Uchiha had also failed. The boys hadn't even fought, they'd simply vanished. As if they'd known. Flashback. The First Shinobi World War. 2 young shinobi moved quickly through the trees. They had just survived an attack on their unit. Battered, they leaped from branch to branch. One of them supported his comrade. "Is everything okay, Danzo?" "This is too much, Hiruzen," the young man said irritably and pushed his friend away. "Aw, don't say that," Kazuran said, not at all offended. "We can't afford to lose friends at a time like this." They ran for some time before catching up with the rest of the squad. "There are too many enemies. What are we going to do?" Hamura turned around as he ran. "Yes, you're right," Sarutobi said thoughtfully. "Guys, let's run to the second Hokage." No one argued, and they soon reunited with their sensei, commander, and Hokage. Their squad consisted of 7 people: Danzo himself, Commander Senju Tobarama, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Miyokado Hamura, Yudate Koharu, Uchiha Kagami, and Akimichi Torafu. "We're surrounded. There are 20 enemies." "Kinkaku's elite squad," the Nindane said, drawing a rough map of their location on the ground. "We can't handle it," Miyokado immediately responded. "Hamura, don't be so cowardly," Koharu snapped. "The only way," Uchiha raised his head. "We need to distract them somehow." "Distract them with bait?" Akimichi looked at the commander. "That would be suicide. I'm a shinobi," Shimura thought, "and I swore to die on the battlefield." "Sarutobi," he mentally addressed his friend. "What are you thinking about now? Are you ready to sacrifice yourself?" "I'll tell you now." The young man hesitated, wanting so much to show off, but something inside him was holding him back, making him hesitate. Why can't I decide?" "I'll go," his friend's confident voice sounded in the silence. "Sarutobi," Akimichi exclaimed. "Hijirin." "But," Hamura began, but was interrupted. "Heh," the guy chuckled. "Don't worry. I don't like to brag," he continued with a kindly grin, "but I'm the best fit. I won't die." Danzo sat there, thunderstruck, his inside seething, his thoughts clashing, something dark rising from the depths of his heart, whispering, "How? Why him? Why always him? Why can't I surpass him?" He was brought back to his senses by his friends, hand landing on his shoulder. "Danzo, I'm leaving all the guys in your care. Are you sure you—" "Shut up," the guy flared, pushing the other man's hand away. "I was about to raise my hand. Don't play tough. I'll be the bait." "I will be the bait, of course." The sensei's voice sounded impartial. "You can't," Danzo exclaimed. "You are the Hokage. You're the most powerful shinobi in the village." "Danzo, you always compete with Saru in everything." "Sarah. But in this situation you must act as friends." "Friends? Why?" Let go of your mutual resentments. The Hokage continued, his scarlet eyes peering intently at the students. At your age, there's no need to rush, he said, standing up. Saru, protect those who love the village and care for those you entrust to the next generation. Starting tomorrow, you will be Hokage. What? No. 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 Why him? Why him again? Saru, I entrust Konoha to you. He indeed flashback. He couldn't become Hokage, but the life of a shinobi is one of constant sacrifice. By denying ourselves the light of day, we retreat into darkness. That's how it was before, and that's how it should be. So, for the sake of the shinobi world, for the sake of Konoha, he became a root growing in the darkness. Sarutobi is unworthy of the Kage's place. He thought so before, and he still thinks so. That's why he created the Anbuna and began gathering gifted shinobi under his wing. After the Third Shinobi World War, at Danzo's instigation, Hiruzen decided to resign as Hokage. This presented the perfect opportunity to nominate Orochimaru. The Sannin was imbued with every available obedience seal, and had been conducting clandestine experiments on people in a near unconscious state for years. Danzo couldn't care less about the White Snake's sanity. He had disliked the boy from the start, and he was one of his friends' favorite students. But Hiruzen, as if sensing something, nominated Minato Namikaze during a meeting in the Land of Fire. Danzo had always believed that Hiruzen's actions would sooner or later lead to Konoha's destruction. Shortly after the Kyuubi's attack on Konoha, Danzo took advantage of Hitaki Kakashi's depression and blamed Hiruzen for Minato's death. He invited Kakashi to join him, which he accepted. And although the son of the White Fan remains quiet, something makes Shimura doubt his loyalty. The Konoha elder knew for certain that he could never trust anyone. Even having protected himself with seals on his own subordinates, he couldn't trust them completely. He had to become stronger and eliminate the threat from within. Only then would Konoha become stronger. Only then would it become the strongest village. Only then would he, Shimura Danzo, assume the post of Hokage. Until then, he would remain in the shadows, observing, directing, and ruling from there. Chapter 9. And they are just children. All the world's children cry in the same language. Leonid Leonov. Have you ever watched the sunrise? It's best to do this in an open area, like a field or a meadow. The sun rises slowly. Its disk appears slightly on the horizon at first, then more and more, until it completely appears in the sky. From the graying darkness, the vague outlines of the surrounding world gradually emerge, the silhouettes of houses and trees. A bright spot on the horizon grows larger and larger. A light breeze blows. A morning chill spreads across the land. Finally, a dazzling rim of sunlight flares up near the horizon. It's still quite small, but already astonishingly bright. As it glimmers in the east, the first birds awaken. A rustling sound can be heard in the bushes and tree branches. Somewhere, a dog barks, a door creaks, and voices ring out. The day begins. The beginning of a new life. But today, everything was completely different. The streets of Konoha were completely empty. Only shadows glided across the rooftops, peering into the windows. Did you find anyone? No. I need to report to Danzo-sama immediately. He won't like it. Frozen for a moment in the shadows of the house, two men wearing eagle and lynx masks took off and vanished into the surrounding space. But they never reached headquarters. A shinobi in identical clothing and a dog mask blocked their path. Besides root members, other shinobi began appearing on the streets, but not a single civilian. A battle will be fought on the streets of Konoha today, and no one knows how destructive it will be, how many lives it will take, or who will emerge victorious. Slowly, the shinobi on the streets, like human rivers, flowed through the streets and merged into a vast sea of human heads in the square. Their Kage emerged from the square in battle attire. "Residents of Konoha," the Sandame's voice rang out. "Friends, for a long time we have been fighting an external enemy, but we completely overlooked the fact that a serious internal threat existed all this time. The time has come to rectify this. The will of fire gives the strength to fight against adversity and enhances willpower and fortitude. It states that a true shinobi of Konoha must love, cherish, and fight for their village, as generations before them did. With sorrow, I, Sarutobi Hijiran, Sandame Hokage, declare Danzo Shimura a traitor. He is accused of creating an illegal organization, kidnapping and disappearing numerous children, and attempting to assassinate Akage." The crowd buzzed. They were ready. And even though they didn't know the full extent of the enemy's capabilities, they would not surrender. All the clans of Konohagakure had united, not just as allies, but as friends, not setting aside their differences, but accepting each other as they were. These changes were already being felt, even if they weren't yet being recognized. Today everything will be decided, something will end and something will begin. Deep within the rock lies a shelter where civilians remain, men, women, children, and the elderly. A little further away, shinobi who are unable to fight, some due to age, some due to health issues, are stationed. And in the very corner are the shinobi children, among whom the most prominent are the children who form a circle in the very corner. The little Hyuga sat with her back against the wall, cradling her little sister tightly in her arms, and humming one of the songs she'd learned from Oka-san. Niji sat next to her, frowning. Sasuke settled himself next to her, but was in no hurry to sit, his annoyed gaze sweeping over everyone present. The boy couldn't decide which of his feelings was stronger, resentment at being left behind or worry for his family. Kiba pursed his lips and stroked Ekamaru, who was whining in his arms. Ino and Sakura, whom she'd brought, sat close together, nervously fiddling with the fabric of their robes. Shino hid his face behind his high collar and sat completely silent. Shikamaru leaned against Chuji's side and pretended to sleep, but his furrowed brows betrayed it, while his friend stared blankly into space. The only one who couldn't sit still was Naruto. He paced back and forth, pursing his lips, clenching and unclenching his fists, and flashing angrily at his azure eyes. The shinobi in the dog mask took one last look at the blonde head and took off. He still had much work to do. Running past the genin preparing for the upcoming battle, he couldn't help but think that the combatants would be mere children, but he quickly pushed the thought aside, wishing only to remember himself at that age. Such is the fate of a shinobi. But they really were just kids. Stupid, reckless kids. Just kids who grew up too early. Life had dealt them all a terrible blow, taking away their childhood and their right to a happy life. Hade Hyuga stood beside her husband, listening to the Hokage's speech. Her heart pounded with every word. She was torn between thoughts. Had she acted hastily? Had she done something foolish? Could she really take another life? She glanced around at everyone present. Men, women, children. For someone not born in this era, in this culture, it was hard, very hard, to accept its realities. And what was happening now? This was a true civil war. War spares no one. How many would they lose? And how many would they be able to help? After all, not all root members became like this of their own free will. Many simply had no choice. War leaves a deep mark on the soul. And even if the war is won, it is impossible to rejoice in victory knowing how many innocent lives were left on the battlefield. Her gaze found Erasure and Tomo. The boy's shoulder was tightly gripped by his father's arm, and the girl was shielded by her older brothers. She believed these children would survive, but they would never be the same. Her eyes then fell on the black crowns of their heads. Itachi and Shisui were surrounded by their clansmen, their eyes burning with grim determination. She met Mikoto's gaze. The woman smiled sadly, understandingly. Hate flinched as if she'd been slapped. What have I done? She tried to console herself with the thought that this way she would save many more people, but she had no idea where this would lead. It didn't make her feel any better. It only made her sicker. Hate couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of guilt. Lost in her own emotional torment, she shuddered when warm hands settled on her shoulders from either side. Twins looked at her. So similar in appearance, yet so different at the same time. Hizashi smiled broadly and squeezed her hand reassuringly, while Hayashi smiled only the corners of his lips, leaning in slightly and touching his lips to his wife's forehead. Don't think about the bad. We'll get through this. There's no time left, no retreat. They have no choice. They must win. Chapter 10. Our X. The blast wave knocked me off my feet, rolled across the ground, and showered me with clumps of earth and grass. Slowly, as if in a dream, I managed to focus. Hate. I'm alive. Cough, cough. Go, Mikoto. I'll catch up. Cough, cough, I said, choking on the dust. Somewhere off to the side, another explosion thundered. This time, the wave didn't reach me, only carrying ash, bits of earth, and the smell of burning and scorched flesh. Kami-sama, save us all, I whispered, swallowing my tears. It took me 3 tries to get up off my knees. I couldn't feel my arms or legs, my head was pounding, and my eyes were burning from the prolonged activation of the dojutsu. It's a good thing I was only a supporting player in the plan and wasn't involved in the main action. Otherwise, we would have definitely lost. So we don't have much time. Shimura was already stirring. And the failure to capture the eyes only angered him. And what are you proposing, Orochimaru? Fugaka frowned. Call old friends, beat the enemy on his own territory, and with as little bloodshed as possible. The man chuckled, his golden eyes flashing in the dimness of the room. If we're talking about Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya-san, then it might work out, Shikaku said thoughtfully. But will they be able to get there in the next few days? Hokage-sama? Well, there won't be any problems with Jiraiya, but Tsunade. The old man shook his head. Knowing the Sinjaheim's character, there might be complications. I'll take care of her. The white snake chuckled. The civilians will need to be evacuated. Choza rubbed his chin. Exactly. And make sure no one notices. Inoichi frowned. And avoid any panic. With your permission, Hokage-sama, my clan will handle this. The power of the root. We shouldn't underestimate it, Chibi said quietly. I have no doubt in your clan. He looked Inoichi in the eyes. But you're also needed on the battlefield. And there are many clan children in the root. I'm very worried about that. There was silence in the Hokage's office. The explosions were getting closer. Hissing quietly and suppressing my rising hysteria, I reached the hole in the rock the Akimichi elder had dug. It led to the underground root tunnels. I didn't want to go down. I was terribly scared. And only the thought that somewhere out there, my friends and the man I loved were already fighting made me wipe away my tears and step into the abyss. Hayashi, are you back yet? So what have you decided? I rushed up to my husband as soon as he stepped through the door. In response to my stream of questions, he only sighed and ordered me to call Hizashi and come to his office. The plan was extremely simple. It called for simultaneous attacks in 3 main directions. The goal was to reach the heart. The eagle-masked shinobi charged